AI can destroy jobs, it can create jobs, it will most certainly change jobs. But the big question is which jobs will be affected, and how can people deal with that? And that introduces a lot of uncertainty, both for firms as well as for workers. And in a way, you could say that uncertainty or anxiety and even fear of failure are the elephants in the room when we talk about the introduction of AI. And so the big questions are actually how do we deal with those uncertainties? How do we turn a fear of failure into a learning experience from failure? And how we deal with, how do we create a safe environment for all those involved, also for workers who are worried about their future jobs. We're going to have a short introduction by Paul Iske. As Morris said, he's Professor of Open Innovation at Maastricht University. But most important, he is the CFO of his own firm, the Institute of Brilliant Failures. And CFO stands for Chief Failure Officer.
There is one thing that's not certain, and that is that we will fail every now and then. And then the question is, how do we deal with that? And that's something I would like to share with you today. A few thoughts, and then we go to this to the discussion. I'm very much looking forward to that. I give you a very brief and kind of Pechakucha type of introduction to my little life of Brilliant Failures. But it's all about things doing together. You innovate together, you are being exposed together to new developments. You fail, but most importantly, you also learn together. And that I think is very important if you talk about also the workspace of the future. You can only sustain being successful and enjoy your professional life if you're able to be flexible, to learn and to adapt, to navigate. And most of the time we think this very difficult because, of course, we always like to tell about the highlights in our lives. And as an example, half a year ago, I was on holidays at the island of Tenerife together with my family. And one of my family members is Miriam. Miriam is 23. And Miriam has a kind of distortion on her hand. And it's called a telephone. And the whole day she's making pictures with that telephone and puts them on social media, except for the one day and the Thursday, if I remember well. And I said, Miriam, I don't see you taking any pictures. And she said, no, Daddy, that's useless today. I said, oh, so why is that? Well, you can see it yourself. It's clouded. And it even starts to rain. You really think I'm going to post pictures when I'm at Tenerife with clouds and rain? I don't think so. I will use the pictures of yesterday. And this is typically how we think that we should present ourselves and our lives to others. You look, for instance, at the CVs, they're always filled with successes and breakthroughs. But this is not how it works in life. And this is certainly not how it works with these great new transformations, like we see we're dealing with AI. So, we often see that if people are doing the introductions of new technology and in general of anything they want to change, they start with project plans and business cases. And actually, I've been exposed to hundreds and hundreds of project plans, research plans, business cases in my life. And one day I started to wonder how many of these cases really turn into reality exactly the way they have been phrased in the plan. And actually, the answer was quite simple. It was exactly zero. Most of the time, it takes more time, less result, more arguments, costs more money. Very, very rarely, but it does happen. It goes better than anticipated. But I've never seen something going exactly via plan. So when I receive a plan nowadays, the first thing I think is, okay, this is how it will not be. Let's see and wait how it will be. And the idea we have is well, this is the plan. For instance, and let's bring it a little bit closer to implementation or deployment of data science, AI. We think, well, we have a great idea, we have great technology, it works. So we're going to achieve this. We're going to make this operational, and I'm going to do my best to make it happen. I'm going to implement, and that's it. But the road to that type of transformations to the outcome is never like this. It's always like that. And the people who are best positioned to enjoy, to be successful, and to at least benefit from what they try to do are the ones that are prepared for the lower part, for the lower picture. They deal with disappointments. They also see when they reached new peaks, they see new opportunities, they see a new landscape, and they, like I said before, they're very good in navigation. And what we often see with the introduction of new of tools or new technologies or changes in general, we see this concept or this impact of what we call the last mile. The last mile is about people want to do something, want to do new things, are being exposed to new things, and they start with a lot of enthusiasm, great ideas, no doubt about it. And they can support, and they do some testing, and they try to pilot, prototyping, experiments, seed money, all those things, and at the end, then we see the most difficult part, and that's what we call implementation. That's what we call rollout and scale up. And why is that so difficult? Because that's where you really are looking at changes on a fundamental level, where people have to change, their work behavior has to change, organization change, much more money is necessary. And that's where we see that most of the great ideas struggle, if not fail. That's also the breeding ground for my Institute of Brilliant Failures. And you see this especially when we talk about new technologies. And with my background in physics, I wrote down this formula, and this formula reads NT plus OO equals EOO. And this stands for new technology in an old organization gives you expensive old organization. And I have seen very, very, very many expensive old organizations where people do invest heavily in the technology, and be it hardware or software, systems, whatever, but not enough in what we call social innovation, helping people, processes, organizations to be ready for that future, be it or be it not with the technology, with things like AI. And I see many, many people being disappointed, many, many people struggle simply because they were not prepared. Simply they were not seeing, they were not exposed to the benefits, simply because it is too fast. Simply because there's a mismatch between how this system works in theory and how it works in the practice. So that I think is very important, that we should try to avoid this old organization. I am also the chairman of a foundation. It's called the Personalized Healthcare Catalyst. And our mission is to accelerate the transition to more personalized, data-driven healthcare. And why are we doing this? Because we see great potential in the breakthroughs in biomedical science. We see even more breakthroughs in data science. And the combination of these two can lead to an explosive mixture. And there are so many things possible now and in a very, very near future. There is one problem, and that is the absorption, the absorptive capacity of the system. Because of all of these new things, to be able to deliver their potential, you need to change. You need to change the system, you need to change politics, you need to change payment systems, you need to change organizational boundaries, you need to change people's behavior. And that, as we see it, is the biggest obstacle to realize this potential. And I think the same is true when we look at individuals. Of course, everyone sees that the potential of what's possible in the now and in the near future. It is, do we create the right environment for people to try it and to get used to it and to experiment with it and take the time to learn from what happens and what works and what doesn't work. That, I think, is extremely important for this discussion. And by the way, I certainly like the abbreviation of AI, but I hate the term artificial intelligence. At my desk, I have an artificial tree, a bonsai tree. And I got it from my children with the message, "Daddy, this one will not die." And why not? Because I said it never lived. But you understand the message behind their message. But what is the function of this artificial tree, it is to replace the real tree, because the real tree was, at least in my context, not good enough. It didn't work. So if we talk about artificial intelligence, what are we talking about? Are we talking about replacing my intelligence? Now, I think that might be a good idea, but certainly not for your intelligence. So I think if we really want to help people to get used to AI and to make them think positively about it and willing to test it, don't use it, don't call it artificial intelligence, but call it, I think that's much better, additional intelligence or augmented intelligence. If people see that this is being used to support them, to extend our own personal possibilities, to help us to be, to have a better job, to have a better outcome, instead of to see whether it can be more effective and replacing me, that I think is already a step forward if you would look at artificial of AI from that perspective. And then people are willing to give it a try. And then the next step is that we should help them to accept that if you try something, certainly if it's a complex topic like introducing of new technologies like AI, we have to learn. And the world is changing, and if the world changes, we can only keep up if we learn with this, at least with the same speed, with the same pace as the rate of change. And that's also why I think failure is very important. The people in the lean startup community, they always say, oh, we have to fail fast. This is totally bullshit, it's nonsense. We should not fail fast, we should learn fast. And the point is, if something fails, that indeed is an opportunity for failure. But I never, I'm the high priest of failure, I never recommend people to fail as fast as possible, or as much as possible. No, I want to avoid failure by dealing with failure in the right way. And that, first of all, means learn from it. And that's also what fail really means, isn't it? Fail stands for first attempt at learning. That's the real meaning of the word fail. And this works even better if we don't talk just about failure, but about brilliant failure. And what's the difference between a regular failure and brilliant failure? And brilliant failure is something you do with good intentions. So this will only help also people who are exposed to things like AI, if they understand that there is at least the intention to do it good, do something good, to create value, to create a better world, a better workplace, better processes. And then if you understand that people try to do their best to make a better situation, you're more inclined to accept that it might fail and that that it is not something to deal with in a very negative way, but accept it and learn from it. Now, sometimes people say, okay, this is a definition, fine, thank you. But here is a failure. How can I see whether it is a brilliant one or not? Or even worse, how brilliant is this failure? I also hand out prizes for the most brilliant failure, and I'm not going to decide who wins this prize. I have a jury, and the jury asks me, Paul, what are the criteria? How can I see whether the failure is brilliant? Also for them, I have derived a formula, and this formula is called the viral formula, and that's a coincidence, but this is about things that do have to spread, and it is about the V for the vision. What is it what you want to do? If there is value, if there is perceived value, great. If not, it's not brilliant. What is the inspiration that you put into it, the energy you put into it? If you're not inspired and it fails, it's not brilliant. Then risk, don't take too much risk, that's not responsible, but also don't take too little risk, because then you miss opportunities. The A is for approach, that you prepare, that you work together, that you use knowledge that's available. And finally, the L stands for learning. Did you learn something? Are you willing to use that learning? Are you willing to share those learnings so that we create value of failure? And if you score high on all 5 of these, then we have a brilliant failure. You have to be proud. Now, that's, I think, what we need to create a work environment that's open to test and have success and fail with things like AI. If they understand that if it is a brilliant failure, then this is not a step backward, it is 2 steps forward, and it should be dealt with as such. So that's also why I have asked a legal advisor to make an extension of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think people should not be afraid. The last thing we need at the workplace is people are afraid. Afraid for what is coming to them, afraid what's happening to them, afraid of what's happening to them if they are not immediately very successful with new developments like AI. They should come to the workplace. Actually, they should come everywhere, but let's focus on the workplace. They should come to the workplace knowing that they are safe. Yeah, we talk about psychological safety. So this Universal Declaration states that every person has the right to have their failed attempts to be forgiven and to learn from them. And that applies to everyone, wherever you are in your organization. I sent this document to the United Nations and I'm already in phase 2. I got a letter of receipt. But there are also already 13 organizations who have included this document in their labor conditions. It's a social contract. And I think the social contract is very important when we talk about new developments like AI. Now, I will close. I already told you I also hand out prizes for the most brilliant failure in healthcare, in education, in development aid, but also since last year, also in the area of AI in the public sector. Because people in the public sector are even more afraid to fail because then they know they will get a lot of criticism. It's tax money, it's people's money. So people are very, very much afraid to try to develop and to test new developments like AI because they are afraid of the consequences, the feedback from the boss, from the politicians, from the public. And I think there's a very good example of where fear reduction is extremely important. And that is what I would like to conclude with. I really hope that we will be able together to reduce fear for trying something that's new, and reduce fear for talking about things that didn't work, but you can learn from. And that's what I hope everyone will agree with me, that this is something that is very important for us as human beings, to live our lives without being afraid of what's happening. And that indeed we will also accept the fact that failure, and certainly brain failure, is an option and should not be avoided at all costs, but should be embraced as something that if it happens, it shows good intentions, it shows that we're doing our best, and it shows that we can learn and that we will be using those learnings. So thank you. That was a very short introduction, and I'm happy to engage in any form of dialogue.
Thank you, Paul, for this introduction. And maybe I can kick off with a couple of questions, and then meanwhile, everybody can post questions in the chat to Tobias. You said that it's difficult it's a risky combination of having new technologies in an old organization, and it's difficult to change those old organizations. And maybe that has also to do with the fact that it is uncertain. This is the topic of today, right? I think you also at some point mentioned that organizations have to navigate, right? But it is a foggy environment. You have to rely on your instruments and the crew, etc., to navigate. How do you do that? How do you create a clearer vision? How do you elevate the fog?
Yeah, that's of course is more or less a multi-million-dollar question. However, you can say a couple of things about it, and what I've seen at many organizations I work with is it starts with a dialogue, actually, if you think about the change process, how it looks like, it's first of all you have to create a kind of you have to make contact with people. Hey, listen, something's happening, something is important, or something is possible. There are new developments, and make contact and create awareness for what it is. And then the third step is create understanding. That's a very important one. The understanding step means that people know what it could bring, what the benefits could be, but also what is required to make it happen. The fourth step is people do some testing. They show that it might work. And the fifth step is that they see that it could work, and that you create a kind of acceptance. Acceptance means that people say, you know, we should do that more often. Or that other people say, hey, you this thing you did in the other department, why are you not doing that here? The sixth step is what we call institutionalization. Then we embed it in our way of working, in our processes. And the seventh step is internalization. Then we don't think about it anymore. It's part of who we are as a human or as an organization. The big failure I see quite often being made is that people who understand what they want and they make big plans, understand also the potential, they already start at step 5 or step 6 even. They thought about it and they will implement it, and they forget that you cannot be successful if you skip the first 4 steps. And they're impatient, or they feel pressure, or they simply are not interested, or whatever. And this is one of the reasons that I see a lot of new things ending up at in my institute. Is because people don't spend time on these 4 steps, and I've never seen anything, almost nothing seen working that didn't pay attention to the first 4 steps: contact, awareness, understanding, and testing.
But even so, it seems to me that one of the problems is in order to get acceptance of awareness or understanding, you need to know what the effects will be, right? And one of the problems actually with these kind of innovations is that we're not really sure how it will affect jobs, how it will affect the organization. And that also, I mean, in certain organizations, you could say, well, they can take risks because it is a startup. It's no worries if you fail, etc. But there might be some firms that have too much at stake actually to take those risks. How can you still work in such a complex environment which will force you to take steps, but are also risky, not only for the firm but also for the workers?
Yeah. I think you say it very clearly, Rolf. You cannot always escape from risk. I once developed something when I was still working at ABN AMRO Bank. It was the first banking crowdfunding platform. And I got a very nice report from my friends, risk, legal, and compliance. And all of them complained about what I was doing. So I was asked by the board to visit them and explain my view on that report. And I said, listen, it's an excellent report. Everything they tell in this report is true. And that was not the response they expected. But I said, they forget the most important risk. Hey, what is that? I said, that's the risk of doing nothing. And that really opened their eyes. So I really agree. And I don't, like I said, I'm not promoting failure. And I'm also not necessarily promoting risk. But I think you should have a discussion on what is happening, what could be the potential impact of what we do or when we don't do anything. And then we should have a good discussion on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And the point is, what I see in many organizations, especially when we talk about people who are responsible for the continuity of the processes or for risk management, they tend to stay at the safe side. Tonight I will fly to Copenhagen. And indeed, if I step into the plane and the captain says, hello, this is your captain speaking, and today I'm in an experimental mode, then I will say, well, maybe I will take the next flight. On the other hand, if the same company, in this case, for instance, KLM, if they have a failure with a marketing campaign, okay, too bad. You see, and so what I see, and I think that, but it's a very important question you ask. What I see is that at the end of the day, as a society or as a company, you can decide on, okay, what risk is acceptable and what is not acceptable. What happens then is that we try to put this into rules and internal policies and guidelines. And these are usually more strict than actually what we wanted. Now, then people are going to apply those rules. And they want to be at the safe side. So they stay even also inside the rules that were already inside what we really want. And in 2 or 3 or 4 steps, the space that is left is much, much smaller than originally intended. And so we should come back to just having this dialogue. What is acceptable and like that's also why I have this universal declaration. What will happen to us if things fail? Will we die? Will the company explode? Or is it just annoyance? And if that's so, why should we pretend like it is something else? But so that's and that's also an individual level. And I also have this discussion even with my children. I say, okay, if you do that, okay, of course I'm conditioned. Let's see what is worst case scenario. And if you and I always say, if you try to do your best, if you try to do something that we agreed on that might make sense, then there should be no fear. And it still can go wrong, and still you can hate it that it go wrong. But what it certainly should not mean is that you lose respect from me or for whoever else, because we agree, and that's that self-respect. I think that is extremely important. And if you have that self-respect and you know, okay, I'm doing something, and yeah, like you say, Rolf, I have to navigate in my professional life. We have to navigate with this company, and we know that. That's important. We know it, and we try to do our best. We try to look for the best new course, but there is no guarantee. If you agree upon between yourself with yourself and look in the mirror and with each other, then things can still fail, but it will not be an existential problem. It should not be.
If you, I was wondering when you were saying this, because this is about it is about how you value risk, etc. But it's also about setting conditions. And do you see a role for government here? We have policymakers here in the room, the ones that actually gave a grant for this project. What is the role of government here? What is the role of government? Because they can set conditions and take away some of the risks. Right?
No, absolutely. Well, first of all, this also applies to the government itself. I'm also advisor to the Ministry of Justice and Safety in the Netherlands. I do a lot of work in healthcare, and I also do work in the education. And I just left a meeting on from the Ministry of Economics. This is also interesting, of course, for the government itself, because if something goes wrong in as a civil servant in that environment, then quite often it has a political consequence. And if it has a political consequence, it has consequence from the public and from the press. So there is quite a lot of dynamics in the environment of the government that makes it very difficult to deal with failure, actually. But the government here could do something here. I think that absolutely, and that is well, first of all, I think in the area of communication and education, help people to understand. Listen, we are transforming our society, and we agree that that there should be. We cannot avoid the possibility that certain things will not work. You might even think, and that's also why let me give you one other example, and I come back to your question. One of the reasons also to start this Institute of Brilliant Failures, when I was studying, people went bankrupt, and bankruptcy, especially in the Netherlands, is something that can hinder you for a long time. You are being registered. If you go to a bank and the bank says, no, yeah, you are a risk factor because you went bankrupt. And slowly the government says, no, this is not good, because we stop people in the further development. The European Union has done research on what they call entrepreneurial restarters. It's called the Phoenix Project, and together with the Boston Consulting Group. And that project showed that people who start over again after they had financial problems as an entrepreneur, under certain conditions, they are on average more successful than starters. So you see, it's in the benefit of all of us that we motivate people not only to try, but also to stand up and try it again. And I think that's where the government could play an important role. If something doesn't work, they could kind of stimulate that people who and organizations that that failed but learned and are willing to share those learnings with others and are willing to try it again, that they can get a kind of support, at least a kind of positive treatment from the government.
Yeah, but I was also thinking about, say, something in a way more active. So you said, well, of course, the government itself could also innovate, but I don't think people want a reliable government that they don't want too many changes. But the government has always played an important role in creating the infrastructure, whether it is, the physical infrastructure or the educational, the knowledge infrastructure, etc., which can really help firms to mitigate the risks that they're facing when dealing with AI. How do you see that? How active should a government here be?
No, I think you make an excellent remark here. I think certainly at this stage, it's still a learning journey. And I think a learning infrastructure, and actually this program, and it's not because I'm now here at your meeting, but this program you're running, this research is part of that. We all have to learn not only what the potential is of all those new technologies, but also how we avoid this expensive old organization. And an organization is also expensive when we have unhappy people or people who cannot realize their own ambitions and their own dreams. So I think that's certainly what the government could and should do, is create this learning infrastructure. And that's also, by the way, last 2 weeks ago, our Minister for Digital Affairs, actually Secretary of State of Digital Affairs, Alexandra van Huffelen, she announced on an international conference together with her colleague from Germany, the Minister of Digital Affairs, that we will hand out for the second time this Brilliant Failure Award for AI in the public sector, including health and including education. And I think, of course, I'm happy with that because I'm behind this. But I think this type of things, all things that the government could do to create for our country and for Europe, I think this would even work better on a global scale. But I think Europe would be a very great platform to create this this learning thing, because at the end of the day, what it will help us is not. Of course, people are also competing, but you will compete on a higher level. And that's what we all need. We need to live to be active. We need to compete. If you talk about commercial activities on a higher level, and a higher level does not just mean to make more profits, but also for realizing our goals in like the Sustainable Development Goals. We cannot afford, if we talk about sustainability, we cannot afford to waste anything. People talk about we should not waste energy, we should not waste materials. I think we should also not waste time and money, and time and knowledge. So I think we cannot afford ourselves to lose knowledge, insights, experiences, and we cannot afford ourselves to lose the energy of individual people who are not happy, who are not supported, who are not able to learn, who are not appreciated for their attempts to find out how it can be done in a better way. We simply cannot afford that. And that, I think, is a task for the government to optimize this environment so that people can experiment, can learn, and can feel safe to do so.